Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Todd Clint's SharePoint podcast, recorded number 358, recorded live October 2nd, 2017. I am your host, and if you're watching the video feed, either on YouTube or whatever, there's a lower third that tells you who I am, and I am so lazy, I'm not going to take it away the entire time. So if you jump in anywhere in this podcast, you will know who is who. I am Todd Clint, just like it says right here. You can reach me at Todd at toddclint.com, or on the web, toddclint.com, on Twitter, at Todd Clint, Instagram, at Todd Clint, all of those places. I'm consistent with my name. And the other guy that's here, as you can tell from the lower third, I don't mean to steal his thunder, but take it away.
Am I this Shane Young guy? Woo! Hi, my name is Shane Young with Bold Zebras. And today I'm here to talk to you about how Todd wears gray shirts with a gray background, sitting in a gray chair. That's right, folks. We've complained so much about blue shirts and blue everything else that Todd gave up, and now he's went all gray. I'm wearing red. You can hit me on Twitter to talk about all this at Shane's Cows.
Yeah, I can do no right. And for those of you that aren't suffering through the video of this, the gray shirt that I'm wearing is the Ignite speaker shirt. So it's got the Ignite logo, and I'm not looking at a mirror image, so I'm all confused. It's got a little MVP badge on this. So when I went to get, the speaker lounge to get everything set up, the woman's like, "Oh, have you gotten your speaker shirt yet?" And I'm like, "No, I've got it." So she takes me over to the rack of shirts, and she's sifting through search, and she's like, "So, are you an MVP?" And I'm thinking she's like making conversation, and I'm like, "Well, yeah," thinking she can kind of tell and all that. No, she just wanted to know because they had shirts for MVPs. Not she didn't care about me as a person, my thoughts, my ideas. She just wanted to know about my shirt.
And folks, I can tell you, I was there for that horror deal where Todd was all like ready to sign autographs, like, "Oh yeah, I'm an MVP." And she's like, "Oh, you're over in the other rack. Go over there."
Shut up. Just tell me what your shirt is. Yeah. So that was pretty funny. But I did get the speaker shirt, and they did the smart thing. They did not put the year, so I assume that there's just a bunch of these shirts from Ignite last year and the year before, and they're just handing them out every year.
Preview of next year's, right? And it's back in Orlando again. They announced that.
Oh, how did we not get that in the notes? Yeah, so Lori, look that up, please. But Ignite is going to be back in Orlando again next in September of 2018. They announced that on the last day. And, let's jump into that. So let me do the production notes. This is podcast 358. Or 356 if you're actually using the real numbers. But last week's podcast, 357, I completely forgot about and have not done anything with, so I'll get that one out tomorrow. So for production notes, I am a week behind. Now on to the topic. So what is there to talk about except Ignite? There's just nothing that we can say. They have come out and they have said that Ignite will be in Orlando again next year in 2018. In the chat room, so Chris Webb, he was there for Ignite this year. His first thought was, this announcement makes my feet hurt. And yeah, so Shane had to suffer through this. There was a few years with Tech Ed and all that where it was in Orlando, 97 out of 98 years or something. I forget. It was just constantly Orlando. And I got to whining about Orlando a little bit.
Yep.
But I think it didn't go bad this year, given the size and the scope of what they're trying to do. I don't know where it would have gone better.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, right, there's just not a lot of places that can hold that many geeks all at once. And even, as massive as that convention center was, we were actually spread across that convention center, a couple of the hotels that are attached to the convention center, a couple of the wings of the convention center. I mean, and it was literally, Todd's hotel room was right across the street. It was like 5,000 steps to get from a session to back to the hotel room, and that was about as close as you should get. So it was crazy.
Yeah, for those of you that haven't gone there and don't understand the scope and all of that, the Orange County Convention Center is really like a campus. It's multiple buildings, and there is the West Building, which will surprise no one in that it's on the west. My hotel room was west of the West Building, but there's a little walkway. The West Building had a bunch of the sessions. So like Jason and I, we did our session on Thursday. That was in West 321 or 317 or something. And then the West Building is about as big. It's long and it's about as big as the town I grew up in. And then there's a walkway across International Drive that goes to the Hyatt Regency, and then it goes from the Hyatt Regency to the next building in the Orange County Convention Center complex, the North and South building. And that's where the expo hall was, the podcasting was, and all that. And yes, to walk from my hotel room to the expo hall was about 47 gajillion steps. And I wore out 2 pairs of shoes last week. It was a really long thing.
Yeah, and I just straight up wore running shoes, right? I was like, I'm not wearing nice shoes. I'm not even packing them, because there's no way I was putting on some fancy hard leathered shoe to walk around that place. I was like, it's a rough go. I think the Fitbit said I was doing about 20,000 steps a day, and that's a lot for this fat computer nerd. So
yeah, I got in a good number of steps last week too. I had over 30,000 on Wednesday, so that's a pretty good day. The other thing about it is Orlando's hot, and it's not the heat, it's the humidity. Orlando just has everything going against it. It's hot, it's humid, it's yucky. And the walkway across International Drive is outside. It's got a cover, so you're out of the sun, but you're not out of the heat and the humidity. And the same for the one going from the Hyatt Regency over to the North-South building. So not only are you trying to go there quickly and, you've got 30,000 of your closest, fattest, sweatiest friends, but you're out in Orlando's heat. So I just stunk the entire time. It was...
Yeah, it was fun. But other than that, I thought the conference went off well, right? I thought that they did a good job. They organized things pretty good. The layout was nice, and you never really felt bunched up. Like if you remember, like when it was in Chicago, there was a couple of those spaces where everybody kind of had to transfer between the two buildings, and it was, you felt like you were going to have to kill somebody to go from point A to point B. And I never really got that impression with Orlando. So that's another upside of that place, is it is big enough and wide enough that anywhere there was too many people, it could accommodate too many people.
Yeah, and the other thing was there are just a ton of hotels. All of them are named Rosen, but there are a ton of hotels right down by there. So my biggest complaint about Chicago was no hotels were within walking distance of the conference center. Whereas with this one, just physically attached to the conference center, there was 3, the Hilton, the Hyatt Regency, and the Rosen Plaza. And then the Rosen Center was across the street. And then there's about a million other hotels, adjacent to that, 8 or 10 with the name Rosen in them. So, if you wanted to run back during the middle of the day and take a nap or something like that, you could do it. And it was good. So I agree. I'm kind of sick of Orlando, but for a conference this large, it's one of the few conference centers that can handle it. And from a 30,000 geeks, descending on a city and needing to eat and sleep, it's got all the stuff. And like a bunch of the parties were within walking distance. So the AvePoint party we could walk to, the SharePoint community party, all those things.
The OneDrive party, we got this fancy OneDrive sunglasses.
Oh yeah. And, I don't have the sunglasses here, but I did bring my OneDrive badge for the party. That was at the tin roof, so that was
I got mine too. Look at this! Look at this! Yeah. Unscripted. We're so fancy.
Yeah. So it's going to be in Orlando next year, and I wasn't too upset about that. Orlando and Vegas are probably the only 2 places they could do it, honestly.
Well, so speaking of things that you got in Orlando, it sounds like you got recertified or certified in the AD stuff. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Getting closer, yeah. So one of the things that Microsoft does at all of these conferences, and they've done it as long as I can remember at TechEd and all that, is they have a bunch of places to help you get certified or recertified. And I'm not talking about the mental illnesses that I suffer from or enjoy, depending on how you look at it, but the testing stuff. And they had a bunch of these things. So I encouraged some people. I know one of the podcast viewers, who I won't call out because he's not here right now, took him up on it. But they have hands-on labs where you can learn, you can get walked through some of the technologies you don't normally get to play with. I've been on the team that has created those in years past. They do a great job. They have, for exams, they have free test exams, free test prep exams that you can use. And then they have exams on site for half price. And so I've been threatening for months to take exam 70346, which is the Working with Identities and Office 365 exam. And I decided I was just going to do it. So I scheduled the exam for the very first time slot on Monday at noon. And my thought was that I didn't have a lot of prep time, preparing for Ignite and just being generally lazy. So my plan was to take the exam, financially commit myself to it, fail it right away on Monday, knowing I could take it again on site, later that week. But then I accidentally passed it Monday afternoon. So So I got that one. I don't think it garners me any new certifications, but that one plus the next one, 7347, will get me the MCSA for Office 365 or something.
I think that's fancy, but I can't keep up with all the acronyms and such anymore. So I'm just going to have to say good job. And,
yeah. So in the chat room, I've talked about that exam on the podcast a couple times. In the chat room, so you can go to toddclint.com/Slack invite, I believe. I have to give you an invitation to the Slack channel, but there is a study group 7346 channel in there, and I've been talking some of the things about that I saw in there, and kind of helping some folks pass that. I will say one thing. So I was talking to one of our friends, Becky Bertram. She's an MCT. She was helping out there, and we were talking afterwards. And I told that story about how I accidentally passed it. But as I was telling her the story, it occurred to me that that's kind of how it ought to be, right? You should pass the exams because you genuinely know the material, not because you crammed or read the right book or sat in the right session. It should be because you can walk into the room and you know the material. So that's what I did. But if you want help with that exam, I've got that study group in there, and I'm already studying now for 347, so I can get the much coveted MCSA certification on my transcripts.
Maybe you can put that in the lower thirds. It'll now be Todd Clint MCSA wannabe. And you can take away the wannabe.
Heck yeah, I'm doing it. Except I don't have the files for these lower thirds. These are the ones I took from the folks at Ignite.
I'll teach you how to use a image editor, and we can update those.
There we go. But that's a great thing, and that's just one of those things that that's why Microsoft needs so much space, is to do all of these things. And so that was all at the Hyatt Regency. If you didn't go this year, next year when you go to Ignite, all that stuff was at the Hyatt Regency. I assume they'll have it there as well. Just another great benefit while you're sitting around looking for stuff to do.
Yeah. And so if you're looking to get a little more updates and studying, right, you want to learn more of this material so you can just generally know it instead of cramming like Todd just referred to, we've got a link here in the notes for a little utility someone put together that lets you download all the videos from all the sessions and the PowerPoint. So I thought that's pretty cool. And that's just another good way if you're trying to actually learn kind of the whole ecosystem instead of just wanting to cram for an exam. I think that's a great tool someone made available.
Yeah. And so a couple things about that tool. I think the idea is that every session that was delivered at Ignite, video will be available on YouTube. And they've already started trickling out there. Well, not trickling, it's been a big torrent of them. So there's a Microsoft Ignite channel on YouTube, and there's a bunch of videos there. And that will be all of the breakout sessions and all that stuff. But they also had a bunch of exam prep sessions. So there was, I know Andy Malone did the 346, 347 ones. So you can grab those out there. And also that utility will get the slide decks. So, as speakers, we had to turn the slide decks in, and those are out there as well. And so that's something that people have been doing for a few years now, is writing the PowerShell scripts that will go out and download all that. And I think that's genius. That's great stuff.
Yeah. I find it interesting Microsoft hosts all that on YouTube instead of Channel 9, but we won't have a debate about the differences there.
Yeah, well, and this is the first year they've done it on YouTube, and I think you and I know exactly why, is because for video to be hosted on Channel 9, it has to have captions.
Yeah. Well, like the other thing, right, it's the whole reason they do this is a marketing event, right? Ignite is a marketing event. I don't think anyone has any doubts. And so you created a bunch of marketing content. Well, you're going to get a lot more marketing eyeballs out in the old YouTubes than you ever are on Channel 9 or any of Microsoft's properties. So they're meeting the people where they're at as well. So that's another upside to moving to the YouTubes, moving to YouTube instead of Channel 9.
Yeah, and I was surprised because, again, this is the first time they've done that. Or at least and I noticed there were some videos there from last year, so this isn't the first time they did it, but it's the first time I paid attention to it. Yeah, it's a better platform. We all go to YouTube for videos, and it's got the watch lists, and you can share and all that. It makes good sense. Tougher to download. Channel 9 just had the download MP4 button. YouTube, you need a utility to do that.
Yeah, but don't forget, while you're on YouTube, type in PowerShell. You can watch my video.
Yeah. Hopefully, maybe after that, deluge of all that content from Ignite, maybe you've fallen down a bit or two.
I mean, I would deserve it if I had, but there's no catching me now. I'm just a runaway train.
Yep. Another thing we're talking about the parties. The SharePoint community had a party at one of the ice bars there on International Drive, and I finally, after many, many years, got to meet Stefan Gossner. So those of you that have patched a SharePoint farm in the last 5 to 10 years, he is the support engineer at Microsoft that always puts the blog posts out about the new patches. It was where I get a lot of my information. And he is from one of their, subsidiaries in Germany. And first time I ever got to meet the man in person, and it was kind of cool. So I got a picture taken together, and if you've got the video, I'll try to remember to put the picture of it in right here. But it was fun just sitting around talking to him, because we both, tweeted and both aware of each other, and just had never gotten to sit down and chat. That was kind of great. One of those things that when people say, "Well, I don't know if I'm going to go to Ignite or not." Those are the kind of experiences that make it better than just downloading the videos.
Yeah, no, it's always nice, right? The only new person I really met that was of interest was Erwin. I will never say his last name right.
Yep.
But he is the guy who's responsible for the patterns and practices PowerShell. Oh, all the P's. Yep. And it was just nice to shake his hand and kind of talk to him for a minute because, like we've been in each other's bubbles for a long time. He's helped me out with some stuff. I create content that helps him promote his stuff, and it's worked out. But we never met, so it was nice to just shake the guy's hand and say hello.
Yeah, I talked to him a bunch that same night. I think it was Wednesday night. And somebody that was with him, and I forget their name, works with him or something like that. And they were given some stats, and I'm completely making all these numbers up. But there was something like there are 1 billion connections to Office 365 from a patterns and practices commandlet a month or something like that. It is just insane how well used that stuff is.
It really is. And I think the key is that anyone who's downloading it uses the crap out of it, right? No one downloads it and tries it once and says, that was fine. Right? Everyone who gets it, they're like, oh my God, I want to use this every day. And they do. And I think that's where, I think there are over 1 million downloads as well at this point. I mean, the numbers are just jaw dropping, all the things they've done.
Yeah. And that, yeah. So, it was just amazing. And Erwin, and that's one of those funny things. I couldn't remember if Erwin and I had ever spoken in person before, and I just always assume that nobody knows who the hell I am, or that I've made any kind of, that they
except for the poor girl who's giving you the shirt, who you thought wanted your autograph and a tattoo.
Well, except when it doesn't make any sense, then I assume it's. But I made a couple of cases like that where I couldn't remember if I've met somebody, so I normally assume they have no idea who I am, and apparently so I did that with him, and he and I apparently had talked at some other point before. But yeah, he's just one of those guys that has done some amazing things, and I just wanted to come up and shake his hand and all that.
All right, so should we jump into some of the announcements here? We're doing a good job of, we said it'd be 15 minutes, and it's been 18 minutes of us.
Yep. So there was huge announcements. One of the things that always comes back to me is SharePoint Conference 2012, when all of us SharePoint folks were sure that we were out of jobs. We were sure that Microsoft was going to kill SharePoint, that they were going to announce that SharePoint on-prem was dead, that the name SharePoint had been stricken from all the records, and it was just going to be, Office 365 sites or something. Those were dark days. Obviously, that didn't happen, but there were some dark days in there. And then I look back at Ignite a week ago in the year 2017, and there were 11 major announcements around SharePoint Server and OneDrive, and it is every bit as hot now as it ever was. And just the level of excitement was different. So we don't have time to talk about all of them today, though I think we might hit some of them as we play with them and give a little more information. But we're going to hit a few of our favorite announcements from last week.
And the one that we don't have in the notes here, right, is the fact that they announced SharePoint 2019. How did we miss that one? We missed like the most important one of all of them, you would argue.
Well, so that was because that wasn't a SharePoint specific announcement. That came in the bubble of we're going to release new versions of Office servers next year. That was how that didn't. But anyway, so in the show notes, there's a link to the SharePoint team blog on Tech Community that has links to all these things. We're going to have individual links, but if you want to go there, that's the thing. So the first one, so they announced that there will be another on-prem version of SharePoint and Exchange and all those kind of things, SharePoint 2019, and that will come out, they said, the beta sometime in calendar year 2018, and I think they said they're hoping to RTM, RTW, whatever, GA, the code at the end of calendar year 2018. And Microsoft has been very clear for many years that there was going to be at least one more on-prem version of SharePoint, so there's no surprises there. But I think we were all a little surprised that they're really going to do it.
Yep.
And talking to some of my friends at Microsoft, I was cautiously optimistic because I think you and I would both agree that we haven't seen SharePoint 2016 get the adoption that we had hoped that it would. And one of the people from Microsoft that I talked to made the comment that 2019 was going to be what 2016 should have been in terms of, shock and awe. And I hope they're right. I mean, I think the potential is there. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how it comes, how well it's received, right? Because as we've noted several times in the show, that 2016 has just not been adopted at all. And if 2019 really causes that shock and awe, well, we know that to get from 10 or 13 to 19, you gotta do the steps. So it'd be interesting if it kind of reboils everything up. And does 2016 now get a bunch of adoption, or does everyone just plan to flat skip it and just kind of do a touch and go with it? It'd be interesting to see where that story kind of goes.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this maybe last week, or I don't remember. There's been so much that's gone on. But Microsoft has moved away from using the word hybrid and moved towards using the phrase coexistence. I guess coexistence is a word, not a phrase. But I think, and I don't know, I didn't talk to anybody about why they made that change, but I feel like the word coexistence suggests an ongoing state of on-prem and in the cloud. And so I feel like that the fact that they chose that word deliberately suggests to me that they're more committed to on-prem than we've ever thought they were.
See, and I just think that they decided that hybrid was so overused, they needed a new word. They did the Rolodex thing, and somehow they got a word that didn't have the word point or one in there. And
active.
Yeah, they said coexistence, and it was all meta. They all kind of, dude. I don't think it means anything in the regards of they're more focused on-prem in any way, shape, or form. I think it's just a marketing turn of the word.
Turn of phrase. Oh, that could be. But yeah, that was a big one. That one got announced Tuesday, I think, Monday, Tuesday, I forget. That was a big one. Another one of the big announcements that I was excited about was Microsoft released the SharePoint Migration Tool. And this is a free tool from Microsoft. Its whole purpose in life is to get you from wherever you're at into Office 365. And this will take content from SharePoint on-prem, file shares, all kinds of different places, and magically push it up into Office 365. And it's very wizardy and nice, big, juicy next buttons to click. I love it. And it's got the ability to input from CSV, so you can do repetitive things. So that's a good step.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to play with it, see how it stands up to my PowerShell script. If they're on the same playing field. And I've talked to a few people who have used it already, and sounds like other than some one guy I talked to had a really large data set, and he had some problems with one of the earlier releases of it. So it'll be interesting to see if it's, as it continues to evolve, can you really point it at 100 gig file share and be like, to the cloud? Or if they still kind of fall apart there. And PowerShell still has its place for some of the stuff, around metadata properties and some of the manipulative stuff you might want to do. Yeah.
So in the chat room, Mark Chrisman's asking, is this a legitimate competitor to things like Metalogix and DocAv and ShareGate? I would say short answer, no. Long answer, it depends on how small and uncomplicated your data set is. So you hit on one of them. This doesn't pull over metadata. And I think you hit another one, just the size of the corpus can trip it up. So if you have things like that you need, content types and those kind of things, this isn't the tool for you. Now, that's not to say they won't add it, and it is a very focused tool, so it would be very easy for them to add something like that. But as for now, it's pretty basic.
Yeah, well, the same way. So, and ShareGate's the one that jumps out at me. I've used it a few times for customers, and it seems like every time it's been because they wanted to do some type of mapping, right? We want to map user A to user B, and those are a lot of the functionalities that either the Microsoft free tool will have to evolve for, or they're going to say, you know what, those are scenarios that send you to a partner, or to some sweet PowerShell that you can do anything you want with.
And I think the migration tool does have something about mapping usernames.
Okay, so they've done some of that?
I think so. I'm looking at the screenshots now, and I don't see it, but so there's a user mapping file. Yeah, it does have some stuff.
Oh, good. So that was one of the key use case scenarios for the ShareGate, or ShareGate, right? Is that right?
ShareGate did it, yeah. I mean, they all do it, but yeah, ShareGate's the one I've used the most. Speaking of ShareGate, I have to give a shout out to those guys. They gave me a nice little bag of stuff. I got this nice little ShareGate mug, and it's a metal one, so I can do fun metally stuff. And then this ShareGate water bottle. Apparently, they think I have a drinking problem, so I got this. They had a great booth too. If you didn't stop by the ShareGate booth, you're missing out. Their booth was beautiful.
They didn't give me anything, so their booth was poopy.
So as we were talking about the geography of Ignite, again, I was on the far west end of the west building, the exhibit halls on the bowels of the south north building. So Thursday afternoon, Jason and I have our session at 2:15. I'm doing this marathon training thing. I needed to get in a run. So I went and ran over the lunch hour, and I told Jason I would meet him at our room at 1:45 as the previous session is getting out. At 12:45, I get back from my run, and I've got a text from Ben Nayland, the guy at ShareGate that we all know. And he's like, hey, you never picked up your bag of goodies from the ShareGate booth. Now, if he had told me that, and he may very well have told me that I had a bag of goodies to pick up, I'd completely forgotten. I didn't know there was a bag of goodies waiting for me. And I'm like, okay, I'll go grab it. And then I remembered Lori and I had been speaking, or Jason and I had been speaking earlier, and the exhibit hall closed at 4 o'clock on Thursday. For good, for dunsies. Our session went from 2:15 to 3:30, then questions and adulation and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, huh. So I took a shower after my run, got on my dress duds, and ran as fast as I could all the way from my hotel on the west end of the all the way to the exhibit hall. And of course, our session was in the west building and all the way back over.
All of that for a water bottle. I don't know about that.
And a mug.
And
they gave me some of the stuff. There's like a notebook. It was in a T-shirt. There's all kinds of good stuff in there. I don't mean to all that, but it was very nice of them. But yeah, the logistics were bad.
No, I think my new official recommended tool is SharePoint now. I think you met about, or whoever you people are, I don't remember their names anymore. I'm done.
ShareGate. While we're speaking of the exhibit hall, the SharePoint, so the Microsoft SharePoint booth had the SharePoint socks, which I have not worn yet. But those are okay. So we're getting close to time. Okay. So another thing they announced last week was the upcoming SharePoint Admin Center, and this is an Office 365 thing, but it is the admin center for managing all of your SharePointiness. And
it's Go ahead.
Okay, it's not out yet. I believe they're gonna kind of phase it out. It's going to be the new hotness. It's going to replace the old one, but that's coming out.
Yeah, and it's just nice, right? Really, all they tried to do was to add the discoverability, and they did a better job of grouping. So, they kind of figured out here are the things people are going for, and kind of ordered them a little better. There's new reporting as well around. Hey, here are the things that people are using. Here are the site collections the last time they've been used. A lot of that activity stuff. I'm guessing, governance is going to start rearing its ugly head in Office 365 sooner than later. And I think this admin tool is kind of getting out in front of that, giving you a chance to dig in and understand a little better. Yeah. Also worth noting is if you're interested in the Admin Center, you can sign up to get early access to it. There's a link on the page that Todd's put here in the notes there where you can sign up and hopefully get yourself on the list to get that early. So it'll be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and Blake Olson in the chat room saying it's long overdue. I agree. I think they've been spending so much time on the back end and some of the other functional things that they haven't had a chance to do the front end correctly, and they're starting to get caught up on that. So that's a good thing. Another announcement last week was this idea of SharePoint hub sites in Office 365. And I haven't played with hub sites a lot, but this is the ability to roll up site collections into a parent site collection. So think of it as a one-to-many thing. You have one hub site that has many site collections in it, and a site collection can only be in one hub site. But it does things like it pushes down branding and things like that. So it addresses some of the needs that people used back in the day to make webs instead of site collections. They've really come out, and Dan Holm was very adamant about this at Ignite, that webs are bad. Subsites are bad, subwebs are bad. Everything should be a site collection. And I think you and I are pretty close to that. I mean, we've always told people our default position is it should be a site collection unless you can convince me otherwise. Yep. And I think that's one of those things that they're adding now. And I don't remember if that is out yet or not, but that was another one of the things.
Yeah. Well, I also kind of look at it as a replacement. If you think back to when we would do information architecture for an on-prem deployment, we like to use web apps for certain groupings, right? To create, the portal one and the teams one and the projects one. And you can't really do that in Office 365 because you just get one web app. So hopefully this is kind of moving us in that direction, because now we could have a portal hub, a Teams hub, and a projects hub, and kind of flow some of your IA through that. So be an interesting to see how it kind of gets put into play with people, because you're right. The subsites, not only are they, annoying, but they're hard to work with in SharePoint Online as far as, the PowerShell tools, the management tools. A lot of that just doesn't really get the concept that you might have subsites. So I'm guessing that's another driver to them, is giving us a better way to organize our site collections.
Yeah, and another thing that you and I talk about with information architecture is using managed paths, and you only get 2 of those in Office 365 and no more. So this is maybe another way to handle that. I don't know.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll see what Microsoft has one vision of how they'll be used. We'll see what the community actually does with them once it's all said and done.
I wish I could find it now, but there's this great meme of think of like a college campus or something, with some grass and some sidewalk, and there's a sidewalk with an L, and it says design, and then there's the grass worn off where people have been cutting across, and it says user experience. I think that is just a great story on how it's like, oh, that'll be great, we'll do all the stuff, and the user's like, oh, that sucks, we're going to do this instead.
It's 4 less steps to go that way. I'm lazy, right?
Yep. So yeah, you're right. It'll be curious to see what really happens. All right, the last thing that we're going to talk about here is a whole bunch of security things were announced for SharePoint and OneDrive, and this is another piece. At this point, Microsoft is doing very little to differentiate between SharePoint and OneDrive for business, or SharePoint and OneDrive. So there was just a whole lot of SharePoint and OneDrive things. And you're going to see more and more of that. So if you're going out to the Ignite website to download videos or whatever from the conference, you're going to have to start searching for OneDrive as well, because just a bunch of those things were in there. So they announced a bunch of security and that kind of stuff for SharePoint Online and OneDrive. And if you work for a place that has dismissed the cloud because of security things, that is constantly changing for the better. And so this is one of those things. Read this blog post and see what they've added about, things like, certain devices can only come in from certain IP ranges and can only hit certain site collections and only do certain authentication. I mean, there's just every little knob and thing you can tweak is in there.
Yeah, disabling the older authentication protocols that Office 2010 work, the IP range blocking, and like you said, the device controls.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that type of stuff that got surfaced here. Yeah. And in this same framework, talking about kind of security and data as a whole, they also made some announcements that we didn't have a note for around data sovereignty, right? More control around where your data lives, because there's just so many laws, especially coming out of Europe, fast and furious around, German data can live here, Scottish data can live here, and Ukrainian data can live here. There's so much of that going on now that Microsoft's finally said, okay, we get it. We got to let you be able to control where your data goes based on a per user. So it's not even a per site, right? They've gotten down to, letting user-specific data say, okay, these users, their data stays here. And it's pretty cool that they're keeping up with the times there. So kudos to them.
Yeah, and so the phrase that pays on that is multi-geo. That's the phrase that they're using. And
thanks, Lori.
I was going to say it. I was letting you finish. I wasn't going to interrupt. This idea that you can have a single tenant that is a multi-geo tenant, and you can say we have a single exchange tenancy, but my mailbox is guaranteed to sit inside of a U.S. data center. But my buddy Hans, his is guaranteed to sit inside of a German data center. And this site collection that I'm on, it is guaranteed to be inside of a UK data center, and all of those things. It's they're hitting it. That's one of those things, I've told the story 1,000 times. You and I used to have this really long list of all the reasons not to go to Office 365, and I mean it's just and up until 2 weeks ago, one of the things was data sovereignty. I can't control where my data's at. Check it off the list. So that is not available. I don't believe that multi-geo is available yet, but it's on its way.
Yeah, it sounded like it was coming fast, right? And that was the other neat thing about Ignite, right? Was there was no announcement that was like, other than the new SharePoint on-prem, all the other announcements were coming soon. These are things that we see, they're almost done, instead of one day we're going to have something like quantum computing. Oh, wait.
Yeah, and that was so. Shane and I were yucking it up about the half-hour dissertation we got on quantum computing at the Ignite keynote, and it occurred to us that part of the reason for tangents like that is there are very few big announcements anymore because there is so much coming so fast, so often from Microsoft that there isn't a once a year we find out about the new version of Windows kind of thing. So they have to do stuff like this.
Yeah, right. And I guess, did we talk about that last week? Did we tell everybody that was part of the keynote, was the whole quantum computing, the cat in the box, but not in the box thing?
I think we did. Yeah, because we made fun of the, yeah.
Yeah, and Sean McDonough out on Facebook put out a video that was a lot easier to understand, right? Kind of talked about the whole, the polls, whether it was, an up or a down, and the multi-states, but all the multi-states only did. And I think one of the most interesting things that I learned about quantum computing watching the Facebook video as my eyes glazed over was it doesn't work for all data, right? So a quantum computer for your personal PC is not going to be faster. It's going to be slower because quantum computing needs the data set to be optimized for its bittedness to really take effect. And so that was my big takeaway. We're not going to have quantum computer laptops anytime soon because they're not efficient for all data crunching, just specific data crunching.
Yeah, it'll be curious. I left that talk skeptical about its applicableness to me, but we'll see. We'll see what they do.
Well, I'll say years ago I did some consulting for an oil and gas company out of down in Texas. And it turned out that they had a data center with, this has probably been 7 years ago, but literally more than 1,000 computers that all they did was crunch geo data, right? So they would go and explore, take seismic reports and throw it in these machines, and they would just run 24/7, thousands of computers. And I think that's the workloads for quantum computing, right? You take that data, you optimize it so it can go through those, and then all of a sudden, instead of 1,000 of those computers, you've got 10 quantum computers doing the same amount of work. And so very specific data
1,000
sets.
air conditioners keeping those 100 computers cool, near zero and all that.
Yeah, burning the oil that they were trying to find, it kind of
Circle of life, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just take my electric car. I'm good.
That's the way to go. All right, anything else in the notes you want to cover before we...
No, I think we've bored these poor people enough.
We have. All right, so let's move on to the promotion. I think the first one's yours. Tell them about it.
Hey, October 14th, I'll be doing SharePoint Cincinnati here at the fancy Eastgate Hotel. So come and see me. I'm going to talk about SharePoint and the patterns and practices stuff, all the fun PowerShell-y things you can do. And if seeing me is not enough reason, it sounds like Bill Bear will be the keynote. So that'll be fun. And I realize that October 14th is now just 12 days away. So that's a little sooner than I thought. I should probably put that on my calendar sooner or later. Remind me to do that next week.
Yeah. We'll do next Monday. And then after that, in November, which is now next month, I'm going to be at Slovenia at the Thrive Conference. That is November 8th and 9th, though I'm probably going to have to do my stuff on the 8th because I have to be back in town here on the 10th, and I can't get the flights in and out of Slovenia are kicking my behind. So if you're going to be at that conference, come say hello to me in Slovenia. And then you're up next in December.
Oh, look at that. And then I will be speaking at the Southern Cal PowerShell user group. So they wanted to have a session on PowerShell and SharePoint, or SharePoint Online more specifically. So I'm going to come in and do that remotely for those guys. I'm not flying to Southern California just for a user group meeting. But that should be pretty exciting. And, you talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago. I don't remember when. But, I'm doing more and more of these PowerShell user groups because, like you said, everyone wants to learn more. So those of you that are afraid to do sessions, you're like, I have nothing to offer. You'd be surprised how many people really want knowledge that you've got that you're like, no one cares about that. Maybe no one in the SharePoint space cares, but in this case, I'm going to the PowerShell space to bore those people.
Yeah, and there are always beginners. Always beginners. You never forget that. Always beginners. And then the last event, and I can't remember if we talked about this. I know we talked about it before the show. Jeff Teeper announced that, there's going to be Ignite next year. We're all very excited about Ignite. But in May 21st through 23rd, there's going to be the SharePoint North America Conference. And this is, It's a third-party conference. Microsoft doesn't own it. It's not, like the old SharePoint conference that we know and love. But for the last 2 or 3 years, the SharePoint team has made a big deal in May. So they had the May the 4th event 2 years ago, or a year ago, I forget. They had a May event this year where they released some stuff. And they won a big event in this next May. And so this is the event. So you can go to SharePointNA.com, SharePoint North America Conference. And it's going to be a big deal. It's Jeff Teeper got up on a big stage. Jeff Teeper, the guy that owns SharePoint, he's like, I'm going to be there. You should go there. It's a legit thing. So I'm going to be there. I don't know how or what I'm going to do. I don't know if I'll be sweeping floors or what, but I will be there in some fashion, some capacity. So if you're looking at travel budget, one of the problems with having a big conference like Ignite is that you can't send your whole staff. And so, and there's no other conferences to go to. So if you're a SharePoint person and you've had that problem with Ignite, maybe you want to go to this SharePoint NA conference in May and then let your coworkers go to Ignite. So.
Sounds like a good time to me. I mean, SharePoint conferences always are. So.
Yep, and it'll be a good one. I'm very excited about it. So we ran a little bit over, but thanks everybody. Chat room, stick around. I'll be around for a little bit. Thanks everybody. I'll get this episode and the previous one done, and we will see you next week.
Toodles.
Bye everybody.